Hello and welcome to Go-To channel for deep, unfiltered analysis of the global events shaping our world. We're diving into a story that could redefine the future of international power and trade. Just days after one of the most explosive diplomatic clashes in NATO history, Europe and India have signed a groundbreaking deal that bypasses the United States entirely. Tariffs slashed, trade corridors redefined, and strategic alliances reshaped. This is not just economics. This is the dawn of a new geopolitical era. Why are world leaders in Europe seething with anger while Brussels and New Delhi are celebrating? What does this mean for the United States, global markets, and international security? Stay tuned because we're going deep. We'll break down the deal, expose the economic and political fallout, and reveal what this means for the future of global power. Make sure you watch until the end. You don't want to miss the insights that could affect every country, every investor, and every citizen around the world. And before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, click the like icon, and share this video with friends who want to stay ahead of the geopolitical curve. Let's dive in. Just days after one of the most explosive diplomatic confrontations in NATO's 77-year history, the world witnessed a geopolitical earthquake. The catalyst? President Trump's incendiary comments claiming that NATO allies stayed a little back while American troops bore the brunt of the war in Afghanistan. What followed has sent shockwaves through Europe, Asia, and Washington, revealing that the narrative of a fractured NATO is no longer a warning, it is reality. World leaders are not merely expressing outrage, they are acting. They are not issuing press statements. They are constructing new economic circuits that bypass Washington entirely. This is the story of the day the West, quietly but decisively, divorced the United States. The diplomatic trigger: insults that broke trust. On Thursday, January 21st, 2026, during an appearance on Fox Business, President Trump recast the history of the Afghanistan war. In his defense of isolationist policies and threats to withdraw from NATO, he claimed that American troops were doing the real fighting, while allies like the UK, Canada, Germany, and Poland stayed a little back. The reaction was immediate and visceral. United Kingdom Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer called the remarks frankly appalling and insulting. The UK had lost 457 personnel in Afghanistan. These were not rear-line soldiers. They fought and died in Helmand, Kandahar, and other hotspots alongside American Marines. Germany, Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, breaking diplomatic protocol, publicly demanded an apology on ARD, warning that dismissing Allied sacrifices erodes trust. Germany lost 59 service members, with Denmark suffering some of the heaviest per capita casualties among coalition partners. These were not just angry words, they were a seismic breach of trust. NATO's core promise, Article 5, hinges on the belief that an attack on one member is an attack on all, and that each member respects the sacrifices of its allies. Trump's comments effectively told Europe that their blood and effort were irrelevant to the United States. From words to action, Europe and India pivot. Europe quickly realized this was not a storm to wait out, but a climate shift to adapt to. If the U.S. president does not value their blood, he certainly cannot be counted on to protect their borders. The consequence? A frantic acceleration of negotiations with India, which had been slowly unfolding for nearly 2 decades. By January 27, 2026, Brussels and New Delhi finalized a landmark agreement, a deal the European Commission calls the mother of all deals. The scale is unprecedented, representing a total economic integration of the Eurasian Rim without the United States. Key provisions of the EU-India deal. 1. Population coverage. The free trade zone encompasses over 2 billion people. 2. Tariff reductions. EU goods entering India. Tariffs eliminated on 96% of products. Automotive tariffs. Germany's BMW, Mercedes, and Volkswagen face just 10% instead of the historical 110%. Wine and spirits. Tariffs slashed from 150% to near zero. Machinery tariffs of 44% removed. Chemicals. Tariffs of 22% removed. O pharmaceuticals, duty-free entry. 3. Indian exports to the EU. 99% of Indian exports, including textiles, leather, and jewelry, receive tariff-free access, opening a direct pipeline to Paris, Berlin, and Rome. 4. Defense and security cooperation. The deal includes strategic provisions on maritime security, cyber defense, and broader regional stability, functions previously coordinated with Washington. 5. Strategic autonomy. Europe signals it can now defend its economic and geopolitical interests without reliance on the United States. The calculated insult that sparked a new era. The EU-India deal was not simply a business transaction. It was a strategic maneuver in response to insult and isolation. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, stated in New Delhi, "We have sent a signal to the world that rules-based cooperation delivers. And yes, that signal is directed at one man, Donald Trump. This is the essence of what analysts now call the soft ban. The United States cannot be legally expelled from NATO or the WTO, but allies can effectively change the locks, stop sharing intelligence due to lack of trust, redirect trade to bypass American ports, exclude the U.S. from real decision-making at forums like the G7. This soft ban is operational today. While Europe integrates with India, the U.S. retreats into self-imposed isolation. The American isolation is paradox. President Trump's policies, tariffs, withdrawal from 66 international organizations, and the creation of a board of peace, including adversaries like Vladimir Putin, aim to put America first. But these policies have side effects. 1. Economic costs. 25% tariffs inflate the price of imports, reducing consumer purchasing power. American farmers and manufacturers lose access to markets that are now tariff-free to EU competitors. 2. Trade diversion. French wheat, German machinery, and Italian food products will occupy shelves in India that previously would have been American territory. 3. Strategic isolation. Nordic countries, alarmed by U.S. threats over Greenland and the Arctic, move closer to European defense mechanisms. The Greenland crisis and Arctic stakes. The dispute over Greenland, once dismissed as a joke, has become a strategic flashpoint. Trump's repeated interest in buying Greenland from Denmark, paired with threats of tariffs, has alarmed not just Denmark but Sweden, Norway, and Finland. Europe sees the U.S. as unpredictable and aggressive, further accelerating the EU's push for self-reliance and its pivot toward India. Economic numbers that signal a shift. Projected EU-India trade by 2030, expected to double in volume. Projected U.S.-Europe trade by 2030, expected to shrink by 15% under ongoing tariff wars. First mover advantage. European companies gain early dominance in the 1.45 billion-person Indian market, locking out American competitors. This is not a temporary setback. It is a structural realignment. Superpower status erodes not from a single battle but from the cumulative effect of global actors doing business without you. America alone. January 2026 may be remembered as the moment the West quietly but firmly moved on. The EU-India deal is more than trade. It is the geopolitical divorce of the United States from its traditional allies. Trump promised to put America first. Mission accomplished, but perhaps not in the way he imagined. America is now first in isolation, first in tariffs, last in the room where the future is being written. The EU-India deal is signing. The ink is dry, the tariffs are up, the walls are high. Welcome to a new world, a furious, rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape where America is flying solo for the first time in a century. Whether this isolation will lead to recalibration or long-term decline remains to be seen. But one fact is undeniable. The West has written its own rules, and the U.S. is not at the table. A new Eurasian order. The EU-India deal is not merely an economic pact. It represents a tectonic shift in global geopolitics. By excluding the United States from this massive free trade and security arrangement, Europe and India are signaling that strategic partnerships no longer depend on Washington's approval. Historically, the U.S. served as the anchor of the transatlantic alliance, ensuring both security and market access for Europe. But trust has eroded. NATO, once the ultimate collective defense guarantee, now faces a credibility gap. The EU-India axis fills the void left by U.S. disengagement, creating a new Eurasian corridor of economic, technological, and military influence. Economic autonomy. With the elimination of tariffs on nearly all EU exports to India and reciprocal access for Indian goods to Europe, the transatlantic trade balance shifts. Europe gains access to India's emerging middle class and industrial base, while U.S. exporters face barriers on both sides. Technological collaboration. Beyond trade, the deal includes cooperation in semiconductors, green energy, and digital infrastructure. This strengthens Europe and India against supply chain vulnerabilities and reduces reliance on U.S.-dominated technology ecosystems. Security realignment. The defense chapter of the agreement is particularly notable. Maritime security in the Indo-Pacific, cyber defense initiatives, and joint military exercises signify that Europe is redefining its security perimeter without the U.S., while India diversifies away from dependence on Washington. In practical terms, this is the creation of an alternative global axis, a network that bypasses the U.S., mitigates the risk of American unpredictability, and leverages combined market and population size to enforce its strategic will. The economic consequences for the United States. The immediate economic impacts are severe, but the long-term effects could be transformative. 1. Trade diversion as a structural threat. European goods flood the Indian market tariff-free, capturing market share that American exporters once held. Once consumer preferences, supply chains, and distribution networks are established, reversing this advantage will be nearly impossible. 2. Agricultural fallout. American farmers and agribusinesses are particularly vulnerable. U.S. soy, wheat, and corn producers now compete against European suppliers, benefiting from preferential access to India. The result is lost revenue, declining market influence, and increased domestic pressure on U.S. policymakers. 3. Manufacturing reorientation. Companies like Boeing, Caterpillar, and General Electric may see contracts diverted to European manufacturers that enjoy tariff-free entry. As these supply chains mature, the U.S. risks permanent exclusion from emerging markets, particularly in Asia and Africa. 4. Financial realignment. The flow of investments and capital will likely follow trade. European and Indian banks may increasingly finance projects within this new corridor, further reducing the financial leverage historically wielded by Wall Street and the U.S. Treasury in global markets. Strategic isolation and the erosion of influence. Isolation is not only an economic condition, it is a geopolitical reality. U.S. allies are learning to act without Washington, and in doing so, they are creating parallel institutions and alliances that diminish American influence. Intelligence sharing. Trusted U.S. access to European intelligence networks may be curtailed. Allies may selectively withhold sensitive data, given the erosion of trust in Washington. Policy marginalization. Key decisions in global forums, like the G7 or WTO, may increasingly be made in side meetings, from which the U.S. is effectively excluded. Regional defense initiatives. Europe's strategic autonomy, long a buzzword, is now an operational strategy. By integrating India into security planning, Europe hedges against U.S. unpredictability, while gaining a partner capable of projecting power in the Indo-Pacific. In essence, the U.S. is no longer setting the agenda. It is reacting to a world where others have taken the initiative. Global power shifts. The Indo-Pacific and beyond, and India's role in this deal signals a major pivot in the Indo-Pacific. Previously, India's foreign policy heavily relied on the Quad, US, India, Japan, Australia, to counter China. However, Trump's unpredictable tariffs, visa restrictions, and rhetorical hostility have prompted India to diversify alliances. By aligning more closely with Europe, India gains preferential access to European markets, mitigating U.S. tariffs, strengthens its geopolitical position vis-à-vis China without over-reliance on Washington, signals to other global actors that multilateral partnerships can bypass traditional U.S.-led frameworks. This realignment may also influence other regions. Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia could increasingly follow the path of autonomy, creating multiple global centers of gravity instead of a U.S.-centric order. The domestic implications for the United States' isolation abroad will inevitably translate to challenges at home. Political pressure, U.S. exporters, farmers, and industrial firms will lobby for trade relief, potentially forcing policy reversals. Economic drag. Tariffs designed to protect American industries may backfire, leading to higher prices for consumers and businesses, inflationary pressure, and slower growth. Soft power decline. As Europe and India cement a world order that excludes the U.S., American cultural, diplomatic, and economic influence diminishes. Future crises, climate change, pandemics, conflicts, may see the U.S. sidelined. A world without Washington at the center. The EU-India deal is both a response to insult and a strategic masterstroke. By acting decisively, Europe and India have established an economic, technological, and security corridor that minimizes dependence on Washington. The U.S., despite rhetoric and tariffs, now faces the stark reality that the global order can function without it. This is the operational reality of January 2026, a fractured NATO, an isolated America, and a world recalibrating around new alliances. The West has not just reacted, it has rewritten the rules. The question now is whether the United States can recalibrate in time to reclaim influence, or if it will permanently cede ground to a new Eurasian axis of power. One thing is clear, the era of unquestioned U.S. centrality is over. And that's our in-depth look at the EU-India deal and the New World Order emerging in 2026. Europe is pivoting, India is aligning, and the United States is facing a reality of strategic isolation. The decisions being made today will echo for decades to come, reshaping trade, security, and global influence. If you found this analysis insightful, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends and colleagues, and subscribe to New Scope Daily TV so you never miss critical updates from around the world. Hit the notification bell too, because here, we go beyond the headlines and bring you the full story, the numbers, and the strategy behind the news. We want to hear from you. Do you think the United States can recover its influence, or is this truly the start of a new global era without Washington at the center? Comment below, we read every response. Thanks for watching, and stay informed. Stay empowered, and we'll see you in the next deep dive on